It's a pretty safe bet that if you're watching or listening to this podcast, social justice matters to you. How you are treated, how your neighbors are treated, it matters to you. And that's why we try to keep finding interesting, experienced, involved people who can help us dig a little deeper into local justice issues. And there's so much to choose from: immigration, LGBTQ rights, healthcare disparities, the lack of affordable housing. You could probably name several more. So in this episode of Faithful Resistance, we're going to call upon a longtime social justice leader from the community of Edgewater to talk about the intersection of immigration and the lack of affordable housing. So today we welcome back Joel Newton, who's with the Edgewater Collective. And Joel, I think we talked to each other maybe a year ago, March or something, just as the podcast was beginning. And there have been a whole lot of things that have happened to you all since then. So welcome, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how things are going at the Edgewater Collective right now.
Yeah, like a lot of nonprofits across the country, we've had to kind of pivot our work based on just the realities of funding. And so since last summer, we've kind of gone under the radar. Our work has never stopped, but it's slowed a little bit. And so I stepped onto the board. We had to let all of our staff, including myself, but that gave us a chance to kind of pivot and stay under the radar and do some things that organizations that worry a lot about funding and what funders will think. When you don't have any staff that's paid, you can kind of do things that are a little bit more honest and speak the truth. And so that's really what we've been doing over the last year, is listening to our community and speaking up and doing things that are really necessary for our immigrant community in Jeffco.
Well, I want to explore those things that you just said. I think it would be helpful for listeners and viewers to know how you started out really as an education nonprofit, and tell just a little bit of background and how that's progressed, and then we'll get into what you've been doing in the last year.
Yeah, so since 2013, our work was really in the education sphere with, really, as we call it, cradle to career work. So working in the greater Edgewater area, bring partners together to really look at how do we help kids, even prenatally, all the way to college and career, succeed.
Wow.
And during the pandemic, we did a lot of work on the ground right away to really help out students and families. And through that, we really recognize the real opportunities of working with the Latino community. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, we expanded our vision to work with Latino communities all across Jefferson County.
I think you even thought about, or maybe you still are thinking about, changing the name from Edgewater, which is a pretty small area, to something more countywide. Where does that stand?
Exactly. So it was a year and a half ago, we would show up to schools in Arvada or Lakewood, and people would look at us like, what's Edgewater doing here?
Yeah.
Because we were viewed as kind of a really localized organization. And so last year, we started the process with our community to really look at what is Edgewater Collective all about, and what are the values that really make us work. And then right now we're looking at how do we change our name to really fit that expanding mission with Latino communities across the county.
So what are the values that you come from? Keeping in mind, maybe in part, that this podcast is called Faithful Resistance. As Unitarian Universalists, it's part of our faith to do things to help our neighbors. But what are those ground floor values that what's your North Star? I guess I just mixed metaphors, but what's your main value?
I think what we've really heard from the community is that as we've done this work alongside of our Latino neighbors, that one of them is really leadership empowerment. And so we see our community members as leaders, whether it's parents in our schools, leaders of worker cooperative businesses, that our community members really feel this sense of empowerment, that they're seen as leaders, and that is really important to them. And then I think too, there's this real idea of Edgewater Collective is a safe place for our immigrant community members, that there's a real sense of community and valuing the cultural heritage and the uniqueness of our neighbors. And so those are two of the things that have come out of those conversations. Now, the hard part is how do we come up with a bilingual organizational name that really fits those values and more?
It's not the same at all, but our church just changed our name from Jefferson Unitarian Church to Common Flame, not for the same reasons as you, but because of what the name Jefferson can mean, or part of what Jefferson can mean. Do you think it'll end up being a county kind of a name, or I suppose that wouldn't lend itself to being bilingual?
Yeah, we've toyed with that. I think because in the beginning we chose a location name, we want to stay away from using the word Jefferson because a lot of our families move around quite a bit. And so we work with Latino community members that live across Sheridan in Denver. And so we don't want to be limited by a geographical name, even though our focus is really on Jefferson County.
So what would you say in terms of all the different pieces of justice work that have been so important for so long now? Immigration, housing, healthcare, GLBT, all the things. Where are you? Are you working in all of those areas now?
Essentially, like we put our programs and our partnerships into three buckets. So one is education, one is economic opportunity, and another one civic engagement. And so those buckets intersect with a lot of those issues and opportunities that you just mentioned.
So tell me, what do you do in bucket number one? What does the Edgewater Collective do?
So in education, we're really working on how do we train up parents to really speak up for their kids' needs. If you look at education data, which can always be suspect because it's really in a lot of ways showing you where families face more hurdles to economic opportunity. But we believe that every student should be prepared for college or career. And there's really a gap in Jeffco between our Latino students and our white students. So really working on advocacy, working with the school district right now, a lot around immigration, making sure teachers, administrators, and families have the resources they need because there's a lot of fear. So a lot of work is being done around that area. How do we work to get the resources to families and schools around immigration?
Okay. Bucket number two.
So that one, we've really focused on worker cooperatives. We have 4 Latina-led worker cooperative businesses where those leaders run their businesses, they share decision-making power and share all the profit. So it's really creating a new economy, but it really allows them to create their own small businesses and build wealth for their families.
And bucket number three.
So that one's around civic engagement. So a year ago, we trained up about 12 Latina leaders to basically speak up in their spheres of influence, whether it was a school, their neighborhood, or their city government. And so looking at creative ways that we can really train up Latino leaders to share the hurdles they're facing, share about the opportunities that they deserve in their communities. And we really want to see more community leaders even serving in offices of influence that are Latino, and really being able to lead out in that way.
Okay, I want to go back to the piece that really intrigued me at the beginning, which was you saying that when you don't have to go for the grant funding and you don't have to account to funders, you can do a little more. And I want to know what that a little more is.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that in a lot of different spheres, whether it's media, nonprofits, anywhere really, because of what this administration is doing. There's a lot of valid fears about if I say this or do this, will I lose funding? And because the last year, we really haven't had any paid staff, we can kind of lead out and be honest about what our immigrant neighbors deserve and not be scared if we come out and say that our immigrant neighbors deserve housing They deserve opportunities in their schools. Even simple things like handing out know your rights cards. Some organizations fear that if they do that or make a statement on their website or hand out even more resources, they'll lose funding from
Mm.
individual donors, grants, or federal funding. So we're not worried about that. So in our partnerships with various county groups, we can be the ones that are a little wild and crazy and make the statements that our immigrant neighbors really want more people to say.
So it's not as if you were being dishonest before, but now you can be in your face honest.
Yeah, and we can spend money on like specific resources for immigrant neighbors, know your rights cards, these packets to help them prepare if ICE shows up to their door. Some things that our county partners cannot do right now and spend money on.
Yeah.
We can spend money on those things and then share those resources with other partners.
When I first was thinking about talking to you this time around, I was hoping that we could spend at least a little bit of time talking about the intersection of immigration challenges right now and the challenges of the lack of affordable housing, which is affecting everybody. I can't imagine the difficulties there must be in finding affordable housing for immigrants. Tell me what you know about this, and especially in Jefferson County.
Yeah, so it's almost three different things coming together right now and intersecting to make it really hard for immigrant neighbors. And we're hearing about families that are really struggling right now through our school district contacts, where the husband in the family was deported by ICE. The husband was the main breadwinner.
Mm-hmm.
He made a lot of the money that enabled them to afford housing. He gets deported. What does the family do?
Right.
And these are not criminals. These are not people that should be deported, but they were. And so what we're really trying to do right now with school district connections is really try and figure out how we help these families stay in their housing. So it's a very grassroots effort. Last month, we were able to help out a family that we had kids at one of our local schools. Dad was deported. Mom and herself wasn't able to pull in enough money to keep them in the housing. And so they were at risk of being booted from their apartment. So we were able to raise about $2,000, catch them up on their rent, and give them some extra money to go out and buy food or whatever else they needed. Then we just found out about another family in Lakewood, same scenario. Dad was deported by ICE, and they're really concerned that they're going to be evicted. And these are families that do not deserve what's happening to them, and they're valued members of the community. So, really trying to figure out how we can help them out on the ground so they continue to live in our community.
But you have to do it one family at a time. And it's not an inconsequential amount of money, I would think, most of the time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, I mean, the rent right now is really high, but it's anywhere from $1,600 to $2,000. And what we know from our relationships with our Latino community members, they're hardworking families. They hate reaching out for help. They really want to do it on their own, but they've come to the place where they will get evicted if they don't get the financial help. And so that's where we're really trying to work through family engagement liaisons at the schools to find out about families, make sure they want help, and then step in with the funding to help them remain where they are.
What can a regular person do to help in these kinds of situations?
Part of it is the kind of the relationship building. So figuring out who these families are that need help, because in a lot of ways, especially if they're new immigrants, they can feel disconnected from the community around
Sure.
them. So part of it's kind of that relationship network that we can find out who needs help. And then when families do need help, it's finding the money necessary to be able to literally show up their doorstep with cash in hand so that they can stay where they are and they can buy food for their family.
So where do you go? 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 get the money to do not only these sorts of things, but just to print the Know Your Rights pamphlets, to do all the things if these huge grants have gone away?
So in a lot of ways, it feels like COVID. So when COVID hit, we had a lot of people that needed food, whether it was first responders, families, they needed food right away. And so our Edgewater community and beyond stepped up, individual donors just helping out, and we were able to deliver food to homes. In a lot of ways, this feels the same way. It's using our networks to say, we've got this family with kids at an Edgewater school. This is what we need to raise. Are you willing to help out? And so 3 weeks ago, we were able to do that with this Edgewater family, where our community stepped up and donated almost $2,000. And then immediately we were able to go and deliver that cash to our neighbor.
Did you get to go on that delivery trip?
I did. Yeah. And I think every time I get to do this, there's a mixture of sadness and a mixture of hope. Because when I talk to the kids, talk to the mom, you just realize the circumstances they're in. And I have two kids. I can quickly think about what would happen, what I would be thinking, what I would be feeling if that scenario was happening to me. So there's a real mixture of grief. Like, this is not what the United States should be about. My grandfather was an immigrant, went through a much easier process, but they came here for the hope of America. These are hardworking families doing the same thing. So there's a lot of grief, but then in equal parts, there's a lot of hope. Like, our community is stepping up in real ways that make a very tangible difference in the life of a mom with her two kids. And so I think there's both emotions in tandem when we get to step up and deliver that.
What, how would you assess the immigration challenges in Edgewater now, more than a year into this administration?
I think we all thought, especially after what happened in Minneapolis, that ICE would come into Denver and the broader Denver area with a big bang, literally, and we'd be able to see it. Well, ICE has changed their tactics for better or for worse since Minneapolis. And I think it's very easy to be comfortable and say nothing's happening in our community because we don't see it in the news. In reality, though, when we're talking to our Latino neighbors, ICE is still very active in the Denver area, and it's having very real impacts on families. And it's something where we still have to remain vigilant and figure out a way that we can help out those that we find out are hurting and in need in our community.
I guess they got a little more politically savvy after Minneapolis, because if there are raids, they keep them undercover somehow.
And to me, that's almost more, it's scarier because we don't know where it's at. It's harder to figure out, how do we mobilize and stand up, get in the street, do things like what happened in Minneapolis, where you can shed light on what ICE is doing. When it's in secret, it's much harder to figure out, how do we mobilize, shed light on it, and fight back.
I have to say, I get discouraged sometimes when there aren't more of us standing up in protests. I mean, I grew up in the 60s, and I was not the protester of all time, but I was there and I attended. And I would have thought that a situation like this would bring people to the streets more than quarterly for a No Kings rally. I mean, how do you view that?
Yeah, it's hard because I think, like, we see it in Edgewater, we have a group of folks that are communicating online, figuring out what's going on. A lot of people wanted to show up and resist, like happened in Minneapolis. And when it didn't happen, people kind of just spread and went back to their normal lives. And so it's a hard struggle because the resistance isn't as newsworthy. It's not
Right.
as obvious. And so it's hard to get people to engage. But what we realize in Edgewater, when we share the need, people step up in a very real way, especially when it's very tangible. Like we have one family, immigrant family in our community that needs rent. Can you step up and help? And our community does step up.
How do you communicate with the community?
I think throughout COVID and even before that, we have enough of a connection to a network in Edgewater that we can get the word out. We're a trusted entity. What we're now trying to figure out is like with the family in Lakewood, who are the trusted leaders in Lakewood that we can share this need to? They'll get it out to their network and the community will step up.
So your thoughts that began more than a year ago about making your efforts countywide, and clearly you are, you mentioned Arvada and Lakewood, but without a lot of funding, that's got to be a pretty tough row to hoe. What are you hoping for the rest of this calendar year to make more of a difference and to have more people know about you?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really, well, I keep on talking about the pandemic, but we learned a lot through the pandemic.
Yeah,
One of the things was that our Latino community is very interconnected. So we just have to find the Latino leaders in their neighborhood or in their school that when they call out to their network, the network shows up. In Spanish, it's referred to as a promotora. So we just have to find the promotoras in each school on the east side of the county. Then what we have to figure out is who are the allies in each of those communities. And that doesn't take much money or resources to do that. It's just leaning on a lot of our community leaders to figure out how do we create that web of support. And then in the spring, when we move to myself stepping back into an executive director role, we're looking at buying a closed elementary school in our area.
Mulholm, is that the one?
Yeah, Mulholm. So that's will be on the market in the next few months. And our dream is to create a community center for the neighbors in that area and for our Latino communities. So it makes that kind of web of relationships tangible. And I think that will really take us to the next level of building those connections and creating more opportunities.
So even though it's been a tough year, you don't sound the least bit defeated.
No, no, I learned since 2013 that there's kind of an ebb and flow of nonprofit work and community work, and you just kind of have to ride the waves. And sometimes it's still, and you just kind of have to be content. And then sometimes the wave comes, and you just got to be ready for it.
So waving the wand for your wishes for the rest of this year, if somebody was watching this, what would you say? Here's what you can do to help to make us grow and make more of a difference.
Yeah, I think for us, we're really focused over the next few months and into the fall of really finding out who are those community leaders in Arvada, up into Westminster, kind of all along the Sheridan corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Both allies and our Latina community leaders will be changing our name. So we'll be showing up to Jeffco's back to school bash, connecting with more families, and then really building out this fund so that as the school year starts back up, we hear about more families that are impacted by ICE and struggling, that we can respond with those funds to help them remain housed, potentially even connect in those parents to our Latino-led worker cooperatives. But we really have to be proactive in creating economic opportunity with our Latino families.
So you've been doing this 13 years, probably before you even formed the Edgewater Collective now in 2013, right? What
Yeah.
what keeps you going?
I think for me, it's the stories of people we've worked alongside. Like I think of one of our Latina leaders of a worker cooperative who, after 2 years of running the business with her peers, her daughter said, I don't view you as just my mom anymore. You're a business owner. And
Right.
it's stories like that where I don't necessarily like the word empower because that connotates we're transferring power to someone else. Our Latina leaders already have power. It's connecting that power to more economic opportunities or places to bring about real change. And so to me, it's those stories that I hear from our Latino leaders of the impact that it's made on their lives when we're able to unlock those opportunities together.
I can see why that would make really all the difference too, because it's got to be hard sometimes. Those ebbs and flows you talk about, got to be hard. But when it just takes maybe one story to keep you going for a few more weeks, a few more months.
Yeah, one story like that keeps me going for a couple of years.
Good. We need more stories like that.
Yeah.
We definitely do. Well, thank you for joining us once again and bringing us up to date. I know that there's still a website, Edgewater Collective website. People could probably get more information there if they wanted to, or if they wanted to give you money or
Right.
volunteer hours.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. The best of luck to you, Joel. You're doing great work. Thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you all.
Yeah. You'll find several ideas for resistance work on the Faithful Resistance page at still named jeffersonunitarian.org. I'm sure we'll change the website soon to Common Flame. If you have ideas or connections for other people to interview, please email us at faithfulresistance@juc.org. And do your best to put love at the center and use your very own voice and keep on doing the next right thing. Go out and do the next right thing.